Good evening, everyone, on this chilly, chilly Cleveland evening. And it's wonderful to warm ourselves together, to hear some inspiring words, to learn a little bit, and to know that we are going to be reaching out for justice, not only tonight, but in the days to come. I want to introduce myself. I am Cantor Laurel Barr. I'm the spiritual leader here at Temple B'nai Abraham in Elyria. And I'm so pleased to bring together this remarkable group of thought-provoking clergy, community leaders, and inspiring singer-songwriter as we celebrate the life and the everlasting contributions of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It is an honor tonight to have Dr. Karen Wilson Starks, Rabbi Daniel Roberts, Rabbi Joshua Caruso, and my singer, old friend, not that you're old, but we are old friends, Noah Budin, to share their wisdom and inspiring words and music. And we are here not just to honor Dr. King's extraordinary legacy, but to reflect on our shared responsibility to pursue justice and equality in our communities and in the world. Dr. King once said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And in the Torah, we find the timeless command, Tzedek, Tzedek tirdof, justice, justice shall you pursue. The repetition of the word justice reminds us that justice must be pursued with integrity and through just means. This teaching forces us to ask, how can we bring fairness, dignity, and compassion into our actions today? The prophet Micah guides us with another charge. What does the Lord require of you? Only to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. These words resonate with Dr. King's vision of a society built on righteousness, kindness, and humility. Jewish tradition is filled with voices calling for equity and inclusion. And as we begin this program, let us carry these teachings into our hearts, honoring the vision of a world where every person is seen as created b'tselem Elohim, in the image of God. May today inspire us to renew our commitment to building bridges, amplifying voices, and pursuing justice with all our might. It is my great honor to introduce our special guests who will help guide us in this meaningful reflection in the legacy of Dr. King and our collective moral responsibility to continue to create a better world for all. Noah, are your fingers warm?
No.
Well, get them warm. Noah Budin is a singer, a songwriter, a recording artist, a performer, an actor, a storyteller, an educator, and a program director. Noah was a performer educator on the roster of Young Audiences of Greater Cleveland for 8 years, as well as an artist in residence in schools across Northeast Ohio. In the 80s and 90s, he was a member of the Chicago-based a cappella music comedy group, Four Guys Standing Around Singing. They toured the country. They performed at state fairs, summer festivals, colleges, and they opened for and headlined for some people such as Rich Little, Jerry Seinfeld, and the band Chicago, as well as countless other groups. Noah has released 3 CDs of original music, Hallelujah Land, Songs of Faith and Freedom, Metaphor, and Only Love, and has published a songbook, which I'd like for free, Noah, with 22 original songs, which sing out for justice, love, compassion, and liberty as his main themes. Welcome, my friend, Noah Budin.
Thank you. And my friend Tov, the dog. His name is Tov, as in T-O-V, as in good. And we are still waiting for that to happen. But when I was growing up, I thought that this song, when Israel was in Egypt land, let my people go. Everybody's singing right now. Well, I thought that that was a Jewish song, right? Because what's not Jewish about that song? It's a song about Moses. It's in a minor key. We sing it every year at Passover. It's right there in the Maxwell House Haggadah, and it only came to me later that in life that this was not a Jewish song, that this song originated, I don't know, 200 or 300 years ago in this country from our terrible days of slavery. The slaves were not allowed to learn how to read and write, but they were allowed to learn the stories from the Bible, and they were allowed to sing songs. And if you're a slave, the one story in the Bible that you're going to gravitate to is the story of somebody leading slaves out of slavery into freedom. And I believe that we are somewhere in the middle of the book of Exodus right now in our Torah readings. Anyway, they would make up songs, and they weren't stupid. They couldn't read or write, but they weren't stupid. They couldn't just openly sing about wanting to escape. So they wrote these coded songs. Here's a song you don't hear in synagogues that often. Here's a version of this song. A song about Moses crossing the Red Sea. Wade in the water, I said. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water now. God's gonna trouble the water. I said, wade in the water. Come on and wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. Well, God's gonna trouble the water now. Who are those children all dressed in red? God's gonna trouble the water. Must be the children that Moses led. God's gonna trouble the water. I said, wade in the water. Come on, wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. Well, God's gonna trouble the water now. Who are those children all dressed in white? God's gonna trouble the water. Must be the children called the Israelites. God's gonna trouble the water. I said, wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water now. Who are those children all dressed in blue? God's gonna trouble the water. Must be the children that made it on through. God's gonna trouble the water. I said, wade in the water. Come on, wade in the water, children. Wade in the water now. God's gonna trouble the water. I said, wade in the water. Come on and wade in the water, children. Wade in the water now. God's gonna trouble the water. I said, God's gonna trouble the water now. God's gonna trouble the water.
Thank you, Noah. Beautiful. Love it. Love it. Love it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We're going to keep moving forward. I want to introduce Rabbi Daniel Roberts. He is now the Emeritus Rabbi of Temple Emmanuel in Cleveland, Ohio, although you live in Colorado. It's an interesting way to do it. But you have served this congregation here for 30 years, from 1972 to 2002. His rabbinate, though, has spanned for 50 years. Though he has a penchant for humor, Rabbi Roberts tends to tackle very serious issues. A scholar of thanatology, He has written multiple books about death, grieving, and loss, as well as on another topic, a children's book based on his creative Shabbat stories of a king and a queen, a melech and a malka. He has made social justice a centerpiece of his leadership, taking part in what was called the Interfaith Hospitality Network, which housed homeless families for a week at a time at Temple Emmanuel. He and Reverend Marvin McMickle, former pastor of Antioch Baptist Church in Cleveland, forged a lifelong bond and friendship, which always included a yearly combined celebration in honor of Dr. King. Rabbi Roberts and I have been friends for 25 years, serving as his cantor and his sidekick, bringing joy and uplifting spirits in and around Cleveland in the Jewish community. He presently leads worship services in South Dakota once a month at a very special congregation. So, Rabbi Roberts, we look forward to hearing you.
I wish my mother and my father were alive to hear that introduction. My father would be proud and my mother would believe it. So, thank you. You left out one thing, that I am a member of B'nai Avraham. So I could go on for anyway. I need to build on that wonderful song by Noah. I'm a real fan of Noah. He's got some great songs out. And the reason I tell you this is that wading in the water requires us to get wet if we're going to do anything. I just remind all of us, and I'm sure you've heard it 1,000 times, that Noah held up his staff for the water to split and nothing happened. And Nachshon believed in him and waded into the water and nothing happened. And he waded in a little further, and it wasn't until he got up to his nose that the water really split. And I do remind you to get through the water. There's a wonderful reading that I've used right before the Micha Mocha, that to get through the water, you got to hold hands with others. And that was part of my belief. I don't want to brag, but I feel very, very good about a project that I was out looking for a congregation, a Black congregation. It was a time in which Jews and Blacks had kind of had different opinions. And I thought it was time for us to at least talk with one another. And so I talked to a couple of Black ministers, and it didn't work out for whatever reason. And then I happened to meet Reverend Marvin McMickle at a project that we were both speaking at. And I raised the question, and he said, yeah, let's have lunch. And so we had lunch and mapped out, could we talk about serious things? This was the time of skinheads and so forth. And, you know, the question is, what happens if skinheads came to Cleveland? What would we do? And I think that was one of our first conversations. And so we tried to have several different ones. And one of them that came up, of course, was it's Martin Luther King's birthday, and we need to celebrate at each other's congregations. And so we did that for a couple of years. And then I realized that Oliver Shalom, Abraham Joshua Heschel, who died on the 16th of Tevet, which is right now, by the way. So it comes up at the same time as Martin Luther King's birthday. What happened was I decided that they were friends. Martin Luther King and Abraham Joshua Heschel. Abraham Joshua Heschel marched in Selma. We're going to see a little piece of from the PBS program. And as an aside, if you want to see the whole thing, which is very worthwhile, by the way, look up Abraham Joshua Heschel on PBS. It's a wonderful program. But the concept is he went to Selma to march because he believed in social justice. He believed that his big work was man, God in need of man, which doesn't make sense. You could think of we need God, but God needs us as part of perfecting the world. And God can't do it alone. He needs human beings, and that's one of the reasons we're created. Anyway, the two of them became friends. His big remark, and I don't know if Hanan has it in this, but the big remark was that he was marching in Selma, and he said, "My feet felt like they were praying." And I can only add that Martin Luther King was to go to Abraham Joshua Heschel's house for Pesach that year. And of course, he died that March before the two of them. But it was a wonderful relationship we had with Antioch. We would talk about Martin Luther King. We would talk about Abraham Joshua Heschel and their visions of peace. So if I can ask Hanan, if you will show this piece, because it's meaningful to me.
On March 7th, 1965, a day that would be known as America's Bloody Sunday, civil rights activists take to the streets in Selma, Alabama. They march because so many Black Americans are being denied the right to vote.
You came down to make a mockery out of this courthouse, and we're not going to have it.
When the demonstrators cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge, they are met on the other side with a show of force.
But Dr. King himself said that you have to be certifiably insane to think that this handful of crazy young people with no power and no money can change America.
And on this day, trying to change America will be very painful.
You are ordered to stop, stand where you are. This march will not continue.
Before anybody could do anything, they just charged into the group on horseback. They started throwing tear gas, and they just beat up everybody they could.
Martin Luther King Jr. understands a public response, a public outcry is called for.
And Martin Luther King Jr. made this unbelievable appeal for religious leaders to come to Selma. Many rabbis, priests, nuns, and ministers came.
Over the next 2 weeks, thousands make their way to Selma. One clergyman the movement feels is critical to attend is a writer and theologian from New York, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. And for the civil rights movement, Heschel's presence holds a special significance.
We in the African American church would, from time to time, compare ourselves to the children of Israel. We identify with that struggle. We have been held as slaves, held in bondage.
There's an old tradition in Judaism saying that if I see evil in another human being, it's an indication that there must be something of that evil in myself, and vice versa. If I see something good in a person, it is a sign there's something of that same good in me.
Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel was the real thing when it comes to prophetic witness. He was told, others were told, if you go down there, you may not come back. You make sure you make arrangements with your family if you don't make it.
These were moral issues. These were moral decisions and moral commitments. And it was clear what you have to do.
Sometimes we have to wade into the water. Abraham Joshua Heschel arrived in Selma. The rabbis of the South went to him and said, don't go, go home. We don't need you here. And he had the courage and the stamina to walk into the waters, as Noah said, and the waters split. Some heads got split along the way as well. But we have to have examples. And Abraham Joshua Heschel and Martin Luther King were examples of trying to build a world upon justice. We still have a job to do, and each of us has to hold hands with the other to make it happen. I could go on and on and on, but there are others who get a chance to speak as well. Thank you,
Thank you
Cantor,
so
for
much for
inviting me
joining
to
us. It
be
was
part
great
of
to
this
see you.
special moment. I
And
appreciate
thank you for
you.
inspiration. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to continue with Dr. Karen Wilson Starks. She is the president and CEO of Trans Leadership Incorporated. She's the host of The Voice of Leadership, author of Lead Yourself First, fellow of the American Psychological Association, and recipient of the RHR International Excellence in Consultation Award. With more than 30 years as a concierge advisor and consultant to corporate executives and global businesses, Dr. Wilson Starks facilitates positive and profitable culture creation, development of enterprise-focused executive teams, maximization of marketplace, distinctives, and creative advantage, change leadership, executive integration, and executive succession. For those who are interested, she also has unique skills and abilities to effectively apply biblical tenets to secular leadership settings, which I know firsthand, and they're amazing. Her PhD degree in clinical psychology is from the University of Connecticut in Storrs. Previous positions include senior faculty member for the Center for Creative Leadership and active duty Army officer and psychologist. Welcome, Dr. Karen.
Thank you so much, Laurel. It is my pleasure to be here today to share with the congregation, B'nai Abraham, the people of God, and also the visitors who are the people of God. And I have several things that I'd like to share with you about Dr. Martin Luther King. And since my time is short, I'll only be touching the surface. But what I'd like to share with you are three principles that were important in how he led. The first principle being love, the second principle being inclusive vision, and the third being nonviolent social change. And I want to talk about each of those. And I'll start with the love imperative, because that really is the foundation. Dr. King recognized, and you recognize, that God is love. And several quotes that he said. One, he said, hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. He said, I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear. He also said, love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend. And as Laurel said earlier, we are all part of God's creation. He's created all of us, and he sustains all of us every day. He is the one who first loved us, so that therefore we can now choose to love him. And God, when he chose Abraham, he did not choose Abraham because Abraham was great. God chose Abraham because God is great, and he is the one who made Abraham great as well. So as we meditate on this notion that God loved us, that's the impetus for us to also love each other. So that was the foundation of everything that Dr. King did in his ministry. And I would refer to him as a pastor, a minister for such a time as this. That's really what he was. And that includes such a time as this, both in the past and for us now. So I will also be sharing with you a call to action for all of us at the end of this. So the inclusive vision part of what he was talking about, Dr. King knew that the vision was not just for Black people, even though Black people were the oppressed people he was talking about at the time. And I really appreciate the songs, Noah, that you shared that come from the history of the Black people who were enslaved. And we do, Rabbi Roberts, as you mentioned, really relate to the story of the people of Israel enslaved in Egypt. And God seeing them and sending Moses to release them from slavery. That is an important story for those of us who are African American. One of the things he wanted to do was he wanted to move from what he called the quicksands of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. And as part of that dream, I will quote a couple of things that you'll be familiar with. He says, I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together and at the table of brotherhood. One day, right there in Alabama, little Black boys and Black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. That was that inclusive vision. He also acknowledged the presence of white people at the march, and he said that they realized that their destiny is tied up with our destiny, and they've come to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. So he knew we cannot walk alone. This is a journey that we take together as the people of God, as the ones who carry his light. I would also say that Dr. Martin Luther King loved the United States and our country, and he called us to our highest ideals and our highest values. When he was talking about an aspect of this, he referred to a promissory note that the United States had made to its citizens. And he said that instead of honoring the sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check, a check which has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. He also said, I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. And he referenced our American song, My Country 'Tis of Thee, sweet land of liberty. So these are the ideals that he was calling us back to. He wasn't saying it was impossible. He believed that we could live this promise out. And this brings me to the third point of nonviolent social change, how we get there. One of the things that he said to the people who would be going on the marches and the sit-ins, he says, let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protests to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. Now, that's an important line in what he said, meeting physical force with soul force. He used spiritual weapons of warfare. Everything that was done in the civil rights movement under his leadership was bathed in prayer. Prayer at the outset, prayer throughout. It started with prayer. And there were 4 steps to the nonviolent social change process. And he outlines these in his letter from the Birmingham jail, as well as in other places. But the 4 steps are, number 1, you collect the facts to see if there really is injustice going on. And he had gone to Birmingham, had been jailed. They said, what are you doing down here? You don't belong here. And so he says, he had an organization that spanned many, many states, people everywhere. So this was a vision that was not to be done alone. It was being done with other people. And he said, we've collected the facts on Birmingham, and there are lots of injustices going on down there. So that was number 1. They collected the information. He was able to repeat it back. Number 2 in the steps is negotiation. They tried to negotiate with the leaders in the area to get the signs that said white only taken down. Those signs did not come down wholesale, and the ones that did went right back up, and they kept using delaying tactics about when there would be change. And so finally, he says that wasn't working, and we are just in a delay mode. So we go to the third step, which is self-purification. Now, this third step is very important. It is important and it precedes any action. You don't go to action until first he had people go through workshops and training and understanding about what they were going to face. And he asked people, are you able to accept blows without retaliating? Are you able to endure the ordeal of jail? He knew that the people would be beat. He knew that they would be hurt. They would be harmed, even while being nonviolent. And they had to prepare, because our natural reaction, somebody hits us, we want to hit them back. And you have to be disciplined and prepared to not retaliate and not hit back. That was a long amount of training that took place and that everybody had to go through before they would go to step 4, which was the action step, direct action. Direct action in the nonviolent sense would be sit-ins, and they would be marches. And the whole purpose of this direct action was to cause an impact in the environment so that people would be able then to go back to the negotiation table and negotiate for change in the environment. And so that's what he was talking about. Those 4 steps: collect the facts, negotiate with the powers that be, purify yourself, and then the direct action, which was sit-ins and marches. Now, here's what I want you to know is that those approaches led to results that were successful. The Montgomery bus boycott lasted more than a year, and it led to the buses of the city of Montgomery no longer being segregated. We know that the Woolworth lunch counter incident in Greensboro, where students sat in and others sat in, led to those businesses no longer having segregated lunch counters. And as Rabbi Roberts showed in the video clip, that march from Selma to Montgomery, that footage was played all over the United States, and people saw the brutality against people who were nonviolent and people who were innocent, had not committed any crimes. And there was an outrage in our country because people did not want our country to stand for that. And this led to a later march that had police protection. It led to the Voting Rights Act, to Lyndon Johnson, President Johnson, signing that act into law. So what I'm saying is that these approaches work, and they preserve life, because more would be killed if they had showed up in some other way. So when we look around our world today, my question is, what is our call to leadership in today's time? We see wars. We see rumors of wars. We see fires and floods and hurricanes, other disasters. We see murders, continuing police brutality, and we see a wide variety of lovelessness in every way, shape, and form. And here's what I want to say. We still want to keep the vision no matter what we see and no matter what the opposition is, because we are people who are walking by faith and not by sight. And we know Hebrews 11 and verses 1 and 6 tell us that now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. But without faith, it is impossible to please him. For he that comes to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. And in Psalm 46:10, God says, be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. He is still the sovereign God of the universe. So we want to magnify God above our problems, just like David magnified God over the Philistine giant. He knew that God was able. We also have to remember from Deuteronomy 31:8, Hebrews 13:5, that he will never leave us nor forsake us. Yes, we'll have battles. We'll have tough times and difficulties that we go through. We're not alone. God is with us. So we must get to know him, not just about him. Know God for ourselves, so that when we pray to him, we're not a foreigner. He knows who we are. And so that he then can order our steps. We want to seek him first in prayer. We want to bathe everything in prayer. We want to seek him daily in his word. And we want to remember that God first moves in the spiritual world. He moves things around there. And then we see the manifestation and the physical world. And what we want to remember, as the book of Ephesians tells us, that our fight is not against flesh and blood. It's against principalities, it's against powers, and against rulers of darkness of this age. It's against the spiritual host of wickedness in heavenly or high places. In other words, there is still a demonic influence. And even Daniel, when he prayed, it took more than 21 days before God's representative came to let him know what the answer would be. And the angel let him know what those spiritual warfares were that were happening in the heavenlies. So I will say this to you. We don't know always God's timing, but we must persist through trials, through long periods of time, and know that we may not, as Dr. Martin Luther King saw, he knew, he said, I may not get there with you, but he still wanted us to take the journey, and he still was passing the baton. And in today's time, we're passing the baton to those who will live beyond us and come after us. And so I will just end today with the quote from his I Have a Dream speech at the end, because it is still true. When we allow freedom to ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, Black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Karen. I have to give you an amen. That was beautiful, awesome, inspiring. And I think for all of us, we were praying, we were having faith in God's deliverance, and we all felt this tiny bit of joy measured yesterday as Hamas released 3 women hostages. And we continue to pray. We continue to ask God to guide us through the next steps. And hopefully we will see freedom for all the captives.
Amen. I say amen to that.
Amen to all of it. Thank you so much. Really beautiful words. We so appreciate you joining us. Thank you. Thank you. Noah, do you have a quick song?
I don't know about quick, but so like Rabbi Roberts, I could go on and on for hours, and I love talking about my songs. But I'll make the intro quick. How's that? I just hear, I keep hearing all of the songs I could be playing as people are speaking in the video, but this one is from my newest CD called Only Love. The song is called Birmingham. I guess that's all I'll say about that. I was inspired by letters from a Birmingham jail. One of the inspirations was that. Blood on the ground, smoke in the air, turned on the news, and you were there in Birmingham. Fire in their eyes, water on your skin, can't wash away the ugly sins of Birmingham. 7 are the bulls standing by the water, waiting for the slaughter of the innocent. 7 are the fools dancing with the martyrs, standing up to barter with the dissidents. Birmingham. Hopes were blasted, the bells were broken, shrapnel of bricks were the holy token of Birmingham. I hope I'm wrong, but I may not outlive this barren search for a love that forgives in Birmingham. But blessed are the ones tithing at the altar. May they never falter as they pretend to bleed. And blessed are the godless who've never made a pay, but have taken to the pavement to pray with their feet in Birmingham. If you are called to fight for your freedom, would you come running? Would you come bleeding to Birmingham? And if you were called to beat on the drum for the life of a stranger, would you still come to Birmingham? Hopeful are the children, the widows and the lame, standing in the rain of apathy. Hopeful are the righteous, the brothers and the sisters, the marchers and resistors, and the refugees. Rising are the winds upon which are singing, of freedom bells are ringing right from post to post. Rising are the cries of those unforgiven, and now we are living with the ghosts of Birmingham.
Beautiful. Awesome. Thank you so much. Wow. Really, really appreciate that amazing piece. Thank you. All right. Rabbi Caruso, you're up.
Great.
Do a little intro for you.
Oh, you can, or you don't have to.
Just a little spiel about you.
Okay.
So Rabbi Caruso has served Anshe Chesed Fairmount Temple's clergy team since 2002. And most recently, he is part of the wonderful clergy team at the newly formed congregation Mishkan Or in Beechwood, Ohio. You were ordained, I know, from HUC in New York in 1998, and you are proud to teach, to preach, to pastor, and personally engage in the practice of lifelong learning. I know Rabbi Caruso sees justice as an integral part of his rabbinate, bound up with the long and storied legacy of Fairmount Temple. He was inspired to bring congregation-based community organizing to Cleveland, first introducing it to Temple leadership and nurturing its growth among its members. In 2011, his efforts led to the formation of a wonderful program, Greater Cleveland Congregations, the GCC. It is a coalition of more than 30 diverse faith communities from across Northeast Ohio, committed to bringing social and racial justice to the fore. GCC is now the most powerful faith-based citizens' voice in Northeast Ohio. In addition to serving on the strategy team of GCC, Rabbi Caruso sits on the Cuyahoga County Citizens Advisory Council on Equity, is a member of the Commission on Social Action for the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism, RAC, and serves on the core team of RAC Ohio, a state-based justice project representing Reform Jews throughout the state of Ohio. Rabbi Caruso.
Okay, thank you so much, Cantor. Barr. I'm really honored to be here, to have been asked by you, Laurel, to join you tonight. For the folks from Temple B'nai Abraham, I hope you know what a gem you have in Laurel Barr, and she is truly a great, just a spirit and a spark, and a truly proud Jew who wants to share that passion with everybody. So she didn't put me up to say that. I'm just saying, like, I love Cantor Bar. Okay, so I want to share with you a quick story. And I know I'm the only thing standing between you and the Buckeye game. Like I feel like the pressure here. So here's what I want to say. I'm from originally I came here in 2002 to be at Anshe Chesed Fairmount Temple. And serving there, some of you may have heard of, and raise your hand if you heard of Rabbi Arthur J. Lulliveld. Buddy, okay. Rabbi Lulliveld famously was the senior rabbi at Fairmount Temple, and famously in the Freedom Summer of 1964, he went down to Hattiesburg, Mississippi to register Black Americans to vote. And he was part of a huge movement, in Freedom Summer, to do that of rabbis, of clergy, Protestants, and Jews, to walk alongside African Americans and help them, overcome some of the fears, some of the dangers of just getting to registering to vote and getting to the voting box. So, famously, again, he was hit in the eye with a tire iron by white supremacists as they saw him walking with blacks as they were heading to register to vote. And that picture of him with his eye under his eye bleeding went across the Associated Press, across the world. That really became a big iconic photo. And he came back to Fairmount Temple and preached with a welt under his eye, talking about the importance of civil rights and how we have to stand up. Now, the revisionist history is that everybody says they were supportive of him going down there. But the truth of the matter is, some of those congregants said, "Why are you going down there? You're our rabbi in Cleveland. You don't need to go down there." And so he did. And turns out that it wasn't so popular also with the Jews of the South. In 2013, I went on a sabbatical. I was given a sabbatical by my congregation. And part of it was like Judaism across America. How can I go to Judaism across America and not go to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and go back to the scene of what happened and the famous moment when Lulliveld registered blacks to vote and got hit in the eye? I actually met with leaders of the Reform congregation of Hattiesburg, who were leaders at the time that Lulliveld visited in 1964. These two gentlemen were in their 90s, but they still remembered everything. And I sat down with them at an Applebee's for lunch. I had contacted them beforehand. And I said, "I'm Josh Caruso. I'm serving Fairmount Temple. This is the temple where Rabbi Lulliveld left and came to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and stood with you and the Jews and African Americans registered in the vote. He got hit in the eye." And they're all just listening to me. And there was a big pause. And at the end of the pause, one of the gentlemen said, "Yeah, we remember that." And I said, "Isn't that great? Like, it's such a part of our incredible history and legacy." And they said to me, "Yeah, we didn't want him here." So this was a common sentiment for Jews in the South. They didn't want the Northern rabbis to come down and to tell them how to be Jews or what they should do. The truth of the matter is, back in those times, and sometimes today, Black Americans gave Jews cover in the South. And while the Jews were not on the highest level to white people who are white Christians, Jews were higher on the ladder than Black Americans. And so in many ways, it was helpful for Jews to not be on the edge of that danger. And so these were leaders of the community who wanted to keep the status quo, didn't want to change things up too much. And so that really inspired me to continue the work of GCC, of Greater Cleveland Congregations, which is doing, not just doing code collectives and tzedakah boxes, and which is all important, but actually working with community to make change. So I wanted to just share with you for a few moments a little bit of a PowerPoint that helps give you a sense of the work. Hopefully you can see this, of the work we have been doing with Greater Cleveland Congregations, which of course still exists today and was founded in 2011. So This is the founding assembly in 2011. We had 2,000 individuals come. And part of our work, by the way, is working for justice. This was a march after Tamir Rice was gunned down in Cleveland, and recognizing that police violence is a reality sometimes towards African Americans. And we were marching at this point to introduce a consent decree to Cleveland, where it would be a federal opportunity for Cleveland to have to adhere to some standards and create new standards for law enforcement. I want to just share with you a little bit about what this organizing work does. There's a public sector, which is elected officials, and the private sector, which are companies. But the piece and the sweet spot for us is the civic sector. Families, religious congregations, labor unions, civic associations, and advocacy groups. This is a place where in a lot of cities and a lot of towns, the civic sector doesn't exist, or it's not powerful, and there's a vacuum of power. And if that civic sector is not filled, then the private and public sectors work together to create policy and really kind of set a standard for what the community will do. So it's our choice if we want to step up and be part of that civic sector to help create a checks and balances. Again, by the way, well-meaning public sector and private sector officials who kind of need this balance and to help challenge some of the problems in the society. We build power by identifying common self-interests we can only realize together and intentionally building relationships necessary to motivate and sustain action. Community organizing is really built on relationships, having one-to-one meetings and house meetings, getting to know each other, and not just assuming because I saw something on a meme on social media that that's true. The work that we're doing right now are in a few areas: voter engagement, fighting voter suppression, depression, and regression. We actually had a campaign this past season called the Voter Virginity Campaign. And the idea was to get younger folks to register to vote. So we had a very sort of provocative marketing campaign where we had young college students on billboards said, oh, voting virginity, it feels so good. That kind of thing. So it was kind of fun and a little provocative. You never forget your first time. So I'll tell you, it really worked. We work on criminal justice reform as well, particularly around discretionary youth bindover. This is when youth ages 14 to 18 are actually assigned to adult dockets, so cases, so some really terrible, severe, even heinous crimes that happen, like a 14, a 15, a 16-year-old might hurt somebody, kill somebody. Those, instead of being tried as youth, they are being tried as adults. So once they get convicted, they're in adult jails. Imagine a 14, 15, 16-year-old in an adult jail, okay? So while the crimes were horrible and they should pay for them, we also know that teens are still developing their frontal cortex. They don't always know and understand the consequences of their actions. And we have to consider the context in which they were raised. Okay, again, not to excuse the actions, but to understand that it's different than a 28-year-old, a 35-year-old, a 50-year-old committing that kind of crime. Here's the big shame of all of the youth whose cases have been bound over to become treated like adult. 94% of those kids are people of color. So from those 14 to 18-year-olds whose cases were turned over to adult dockets, 94% are children of color. There's a problem with that, okay? And it's not because people of color are predisposed to commit heinous crimes. It's because of the communities in which they're raised, the schools in which they're put into, the lack of supports. Health equity. During the pandemic, in some of the Cleveland neighborhoods, and there was a dearth of pharmacies, that would offer testing for COVID. This is before the vaccine was developed. And so what we did was we had created testing centers in the neighborhoods, in the churches in the neighborhoods to test. And when the vaccines were developed, churches distributed these vaccines. We had an initiative called Dollars for Doses. We would actually give people hard cash to get a shot. And what did that do? That gave people needed money who were impacted adversely financially because of COVID. It put dollars in their hands, and we actually gave them incentive, another $25 if they brought somebody else to get a shot. And it helped keep our community healthier. Gun safety kind of goes unsaid, but the importance of trying to figure out how do we create systems, opportunities to control guns, and to have some element of control, because guns are clearly quite prevalent in our inner cities, in our communities. We know it's a huge issue in our country. Of the 300 plus million people who live in this country, there is about one firearm for every person in this country. One firearm for every person. And then finally, economic democracy. We actually have a program called Power Up. And this is a program that helps create buying power, leveraging our buying power. So actually Mishkan Or is part of something that where we buy electricity. Our electricity is bought through a sort of a negotiated co-op. So if Mishkan Or is a big congregation and another congregation is smaller and they're having trouble paying their bills, we go in on that together. We leverage our buying power and come together and create that. So I would just say any institutions that are represented by individuals here on this Zoom, please know that if you're interested in working on your utility buying power, either electric or gas or other forms of utility, and are looking and your prices are high, if you're interested, please be in touch with Cantor Barr and she can give you my information if you want to be part of that collective buying power. It's a very powerful thing. So more information if you'd like to know about GCC, it's fine. Anybody from Temple B'nai Abraham is welcome to come to some of our actions to learn more about this work. It's so good to be here with you today. I appreciate the invitation, and special to be celebrating and paying tribute to Dr. King with you.
Thank you, Rabbi Caruso. Thank you for the great shout out, first of all. Oh my God. Okay. And I have to say that I loved being part of the Greater Cleveland congregations. I got to speak at some meetings, but it was an honor to speak to, what was it, 1,100 people. And we together were able to open a crisis center for those in Cleveland or other communities that were in crisis with mental illness or drug addiction, that they had a place to go to without needing any other intervention. They could get themselves in, get themselves stabilized, and then assessed for treatment. And I think that was one of the highlights of being able to work with GCC myself, to share our story and really see something happen with it. So when you put the action and you see results, it's amazing. So keep on doing all the great work you do, and I'll see you probably at see you at work. Yeah, see you at work. So I want to say thank you to everyone this evening for joining us. Thank you to those from Temple Emmanuel that are my old congregants and all of my new friends and congregants, and to Dr. Karen Wilson Starks, Rabbi Caruso, Noah, to Rabbi Roberts. Did I miss anybody? Yes, of course. To Hanan, my husband, for putting together the tech and creating the video snippet for us. It was very, very nice. And I want to close this evening out. Hello, Rabbi Sharon Bar-Skolnick, her daughter. Hello. And I want to close the night out with a great song for us to keep on rolling.
I think we have to close with this song. And if you feel the need to leave the meeting during the song for the football game or whatever it is, I won't be offended. In fact, if Laurel decides to end the meeting while I'm still singing, I'm just going to keep singing anyway because I like the song. And I invite you all to sing with me. And I know we're all muted. Maybe some of you feel that's better that way, but just like my hero, Pete Seeger, who's back there in that picture, I want us all to sing. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall live in peace someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. Sing it loud. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep, deep in my heart, I do believe that we'll walk hand in hand someday. And this, I think, the most important verse. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid today. Today. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we are not afraid today. Let's sing it so loud that they can hear us all together. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome
Noah, I believe we shall overcome someday. I think we are so inspired, and I'm so inspired from all of you being together tonight. Thank you all. May we all be blessed with the strength to continue the work that is necessary for Dr. King's legacy, all the prayers and the work that we need to do for advocacy, for the hostages, for the wars to end. And may it be so. Ken Yehi Ratzon. Have a great night. And we'll see you again for happy occasions as well. Some more of them. Thank you
Amen.
all. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Laurel, for assembling this.
Thank you.
Occasion.
Thank you for
the-
joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Great job, Noah.
Thank you.
Yes, beautiful music.
Thank you for the opportunity. Together. Honored to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You for putting this together. It was wonderful.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you.
Terrific
It's lovely.
program.
Thank you. Great.
Wonderful. Thank you.
It was a wonderful way to remember Dr. King and his legacy.
For
Thank
sure.
you so much. Really
Great.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
good. I'm so glad we were all together.
Yes.
It seemed like the right day to have it with the hostages.
Yes, it was.
It just all worked. So
Yes.
good timing.
It all meshed
Sure does. All the same justice, love, equality, peace. It's all there, no matter what.
Thank
Trouble.
you.
Thank you.